All right guys, welcome back to the channel. As you can see, we got some Halloween decorations out, which means temperatures are falling and it's time to winterize your sprinkler system. I'll show you how to do that next. Okay, let's first talk about some of the reasons why you want to winterize your sprinkler system. Number one, when water freezes, it expands. So if water's left in your pipes over the winter season, it can expand and break those pipes. And number two, it's a great time to just check to make sure your lines are clear, that everything's working before you put the system down for the winter. So the first thing you're going to want to do when it comes to winterizing your sprinklers is find out where your water's coming into your sprinkler system from. There's two main ways that the water can feed your sprinkler lines. One is from a secondary water source, and the other is from your own Culinary system. And what we're going to want to do is find that water source and make sure that we kill it. So if your sprinklers are powered by Culinary water, typically your shutoff valve for your water is going to be in your house, usually in a basement or a crawl space. I have secondary water, so I'm just going to give you an example of what this might look like in your house. For me, I have one part of my main line that goes out to my hose bibs on my house. You're going to have something that looks a lot like this that goes out to your sprinkling system. You're going to want to come here and turn the ball valve to an off position, a 90 degree, basically where it's perpendicular to the line, and do that first to cut off the water from your main line out to your sprinkler system. And once you've turned off the line, you might have an area that you can drain the water. You're going to want to take that out and put like a bowl or something underneath to catch any water that might be stuck in the system that way. And after you turn off your main line in your house, you'll typically have some sort of plumbing just right outside your house, either in the front or in the side yard, in a U-shape that has a backflow preventer on it. And what you're going to want to do is turn off the water again at the backflow preventer and then drain that backflow preventer. And at the backflow preventer, you'll also have access to put in your compressor and blow out the rest of the system. Again, I'm not going to show you that today because I have a secondary system, but that's kind of the format that you would use if you have a Culinary water system that powers your sprinkler system. So with a secondary water source, you're gonna have a shutoff valve somewhere in your yard. For me, in my yard, I have a spigot here. So I don't know if you can get in there and see that. I'm just gonna turn that to shut it off. So we'll do that now. Perfect, so that is shut off. But you might also have a formation like this. Come over here to this one. So you can see here on this one, there's a ball valve that shuts off the water from the secondary water source. And you want to do it at the 90 degree angle to turn it off. This one's off. And then it leads into a main filter for the system. The water comes in here, pulls out any of the big debris that comes from that secondary water source. And so from here, you can undo the cap of the filter, release the pressure, pull the filter out, clean it every season. We're going to do that on my system as well. Once you've turned off your water, whether in your house or your secondary line, the very next step in the process is you want to relieve any pressure that's been sitting in the system. Okay, so for mine, like I was showing you, there's usually a filter with your main line in your system. This is a great place to relieve the pressure and also get rid of some of the standing water in the system. So for mine down here, I actually have a valve to open this, and you can see water's coming out. We're gonna let the water out that's been collecting in this. I live kind of on a slope, so I have gravity that will pull a lot of the water from my lines and pull it back down to where the water comes in. This is great if you have some elevation in your yard and you have a secondary water source like me. You may just wanna wait a couple weeks after your water shuts off and let gravity pull a lot of that water back out of your system. That'll be kind of a natural winterization of your line. I think it's also smart to blow them out like we're gonna do today. But if it were me and you can wait and it's not gonna freeze yet, I will let the water just kind of pull out on its own. So once you've opened your filter, relieve some of the pressure and the water in your main line, you're going to want to come and relieve that pressure for each of your zones. So if you come over here, my house, I've got 8 different zones in 3 boxes, but what I'll do is on here, you can manually just turn these on. And I would just open them and leave them open for a little bit to relieve some of that pressure, let some of the water come back through. So now you've opened all your solenoids up and allowed them to relieve some of the pressure. The very next step before we get the compressor and start blowing out the lines, you need to make sure you close these all. We're gonna open them one by one when it comes time to pressurize, but for now, make sure they're all closed. All right, now that we've turned off our water, cleared out our lines of some of the initial pressure. Now it's time to get started on compressing the air and blowing it out of our sprinkler system. There's only a few items you need for this. One is you'll need a compressor. This is just a little pancake compressor. I've loved this thing. It's come in handy. I fill up all my tires on my vehicles, bikes, all that stuff all the time. It's relatively cheap. I'll include links in the description below if you'd like to get one or borrow one from a neighbor. You'll also need a hose with a quick connect. You can see right here, here's the quick connect. We're gonna end up putting that on the attachment. Next, also very important, is the attachment. This is what you're gonna use to connect to your main sprinkler line and allow you to blow out, all the water out of your sprinklers. I'm gonna be using a spigot in my yard connected to the main sprinkler line. So for me, I can just unscrew this and I can connect that right onto my spigot. My quick connect goes on here and then I can blow out those sprinklers. And then last, depending on where you have access to put your attachment and blow out your lines, you may need an extension cord to run out to your pancake compressor so you're close enough to that spigot to attach and then blow out the lines. All right, we're gonna put this thing together. And what's nice is what we can do is we can actually close the line, compress it, and I can actually attach it right now. And then we can turn on the compressor, get it all filled with air. And then once we're ready to go and let the air in the system, we're just gonna turn this valve. All right, now that we've got everything connected, there's a few things to know about your compressor. You might have one smaller, bigger than this. Mine's a 6-gallon one, but it works for almost everything that I need. There's 2 valves on here. One is gonna be the tank pressure, and then one is your regulated pressure. Now, when you're blowing out sprinkler lines, you don't wanna have so much regulated pressure that you actually break the lines. So a safe regulated pressure to be at when you pressurize and blow out the system is somewhere between 40 to 80 PSI. I would probably not go all the way to 80. And one thing to kind of note as well is if you have rigid PVC pipes for your sprinkler lines, you can go a little bit closer to that 80 PSI, maybe 70, 75. But if you're using a flexible PVC pipe, you probably wanna be closer to that 40 to 60 PSI range. So let's turn this thing on and get it filled up. So I do have rigid PVC pipes, but even so, I'm still gonna go at a little bit of a lower PSI just to be safe. I always think that's a good rule of thumb. Start at the lower PSI, work up if you need to, but the last thing you wanna do is actually break your lines in the process of trying to save them for winter. So now it's time to go over and open each of our different zones one by one and blow them out. So with my attachment, like I showed you, I have this shut off, so there's no air being run through my system yet. And this is really important. Before you run it through, you're gonna wanna open the zone you wanna run through before you turn this on so you're not just unnecessarily pressurizing your main line. So to blow out these lines, we're gonna manually go in and open the zone. If you have a fancy app on your phone, you can do this there. Then you're not having to run around to each zone. Where I have a couple different spigots, I'm just gonna go to my area with my compressor so I can see the sprinklers pop up as I pressurize them. So there's 3 things that we're gonna need to do while we're in the spigot. Number 1, we gotta turn on the solenoid. Second is we need to open the spigot. And then the last thing is we're gonna open the line to allow the air to go out. So here we go. So you're gonna see the water start to come out, and you wanna wait till all of the sprinklers are blowing kind of a mist or air. You don't want them to be blowing air for too long on their own, but you do wanna make sure you don't turn this off before all of the heads are kind of relieved of the water that's in the system. So we blew that line out. I've again turned the ball valve to turn off the air so it doesn't go into the main line. I've also turned off zone 1. The other thing to remember too is if you have a small compressor that doesn't have a lot of volume, you may need to repeat this process maybe 2 times just to make sure you get all the water out. Now let's work on zone 2. So I have a mix of both sprinklers in my grass, but I also have some drip lines. I know the drip lines have holes in them. I still think it's a good idea to blow them out. So I'm gonna show you how to do that next. All right, we're done with the front. Now it's time to blow out the sprinklers in the backyard. All right, one pro tip, when we were doing the front and just manually opening the solenoids, we had some that were pretty sensitive. And I found that when I used the app, if you have one, it seemed to work just a little bit more efficiently. You don't need the app to do this, but if you have one, I would resort to using that because then you can also be by the zone that you're opening. Just a little bit more convenient, seemed to work just a little bit better, but you can still do it manually. So let's go do that next. Okay, now that I've blown out all of my individual sprinkler lines, and this is a little bit unique to me where I have multiple spigots on my main line, I just want to blow out that main line one more time and get all the water out that I can. So I'm going to hook up to this spigot, stay hooked up, I'm going to pressurize, then I'm just going to open one of my other spigots and see what water comes out. Once you've pressurized and blown out that main line, got all the water out, just make sure you go and close all your spigots as you prepare for winter. You'll also want to do the same with any hose bibs that are connected to your house. Just make sure before the first freeze you come out and just disconnect any hoses that are attached. I've had it before where you leave it attached, the water freezes, it breaks that connection, and then you have a broken hose bib. Okay, one last thing you can do if you have secondary water like me coming in is now's a great time to clean the filter so it's ready for spring. So I'll show you how to do that right now. Again, every filter is going to be a little bit different, but usually there's just a cap to unscrew where you can either take off the end of the filter or the whole thing off. And then for mine, the filter just pops off, and then look at that. We're going to go just rinse that off in the sink, maybe use a toothbrush to get all that grime off. And if you've got a lot of material on this, you're going to want to spray it off outside first. You don't want any big materials getting in a sink, or if you have an outdoor sink, even better, like in your garage. Just a little bit of spraying here and you can clean off all the dirt. Just get that all off so your system isn't clogged and you have good water pressure for the spring. You're gonna wanna get a nice tight fit on the end. There we go. All right guys, that's it. Just remember, you gotta do this before the first hard freeze of the season, so watch your calendar, make sure you're watching the temperatures. And lastly, where it's still fall and not quite winter yet, there's still a lot that you can do with your yard to help it get green, lush, and healthy, and get it ready for spring. So if you want some more tips on how to do that, watch this video right here, and we'll see you over there.